All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from, and welcome to Data Plus Women Germany. We're very happy to have you there for a very special event. But before we start, just a few words about Data Plus Women Germany. So, hello everyone. I am Heidi Kalbe. I lead Data Plus Women Germany here, and we are trying to offer opportunities to learn and network in the area of data analytics. So we are hoping to give attendees the opportunity to share their knowledge and experiences, and we are hoping to unite people of any gender to promote diversity in the data community. So feel free to invite everyone to these events if you like them after today. We do not discriminate any attendees, so whether you're male, female, whatever your age, your ethnicity, your nationality, your academical background or family situation, as we have here today, you are always welcome to join us. And I think Emily Kuhn said it best almost 1.5 years ago now. It's data plus women, it's not data minus men. So again, everyone is welcome. What do we have in store for you today? We have Lindsay Betzendahl here, who will talk about the fantastic initiative Mums Who Viz. And afterwards, we will have a panel discussion around Mums Who Viz with Lindsay, Christina, and Michelle. So feel free to drop all your questions in the Q&A. I know if you RSVP'd, you already left a couple of questions, so we will be addressing those as well, of course. And please stick around. We do have some announcements afterwards. And if you want, you can also network a bit. And with that, all I can say is it's absolutely great to have you all with us. Have a lovely evening or whatever time it is where you are. And over to you, Lindsay.
All right. Thanks so much, Heidi. I will do the notorious screen sharing announcement. And I will now share my screen. Okay. Ta-da. All right. Thanks so much. I'm really excited to be here with you all today, this evening, if you're over in the European area. It is noon here in Pennsylvania. And I'm going to give a brief kind of overview of just kind of what Moms Who Viz is, how it came to be, what we try to do, and how we hope to grow. And I just want to start with this quote by myself. We don't end up with more time in our day when we become mothers. We do end up with a lot more memories, definitely more interesting ones, I think. But we do get to choose which memories we're going to create with the time we have. And I want to start with that because a lot of what I'm going to talk about is my kind of thoughts through how I struggled with being a mother in the data visualization space, both in the community as well as in the field, and how I had to really learn how to juggle some of those time commitments and challenges that happened once becoming a parent, and how looking towards community really helped with a lot of those struggles and gaining a lot of support. All right, so a little bit about me. So as you heard, I'm Lindsay Betzendahl. If anyone knows any other German Betzendahls out there, I would be happy to connect because I am one of the two last Betzendahls in the United States. My sister and I, except for she took her husband's last name. So I'm officially the last one that is still that has children. But I'm the mom of two boys. My youngest at the top there is Gavin, he's 3.5, and my oldest is 8. I'm married to a husband. I've been with him for 12 years. We do live in Pennsylvania, kind of out in the country. Moved down here 2 years ago from Connecticut. I'm a Tableau Zen master, public ambassador. I also teach data visualization at Temple University as an adjunct professor, and I have a full-time job as a consultant, design specialist consultant at Health Data Viz, and I run Project Health Viz. So this is why I look tired most of the time, because this is what they actually look like on a more regular basis. 2 boys are pretty nutty. And this is what I look like when I'm sad and in my bathroom trying to get some space away from my 2 crazy children with no makeup on, because that's really the reality of a mom's life. We don't always look so put together. But so let me bring you back to kind of how this all started. 2 years ago in December 2018, I was on winter vacation in Vermont, my parents' house. And I had a little bit of extra time since I had 2 other adults helping out with my kids. And so when I look back at how I kind of thought about the Moms Who Biz community, as I'll call it, I had posted this tweet about that Kevin Flerlich had put together, this really cool Jeopardy Viz back at the end of 2018. And Kevin and I have been friends for many years, I think back to 2017 or something. So I truly was like, this is great. Where does he find the time? But deep down, when I posted this, I was really like, where does he find the time? Like, I don't have time. I'm kind of jealous that he puts all this great stuff out there, as many other male counterparts did. And I started to think about this of how did I really feel? And why did I feel this way? Why was I actually a little frustrated that I didn't seem to have the time or the energy, perhaps, to do what I saw a lot of my friends doing? I had also started a new job that I started at the beginning of 2019. So I was transitioning into a new position with a woman-owned business. And at the time, we only had 1 male on our team, which was very exciting, to be working with a number of very powerful, very strong women in the data viz space. And then there was a moment where Andy Kriebel had written a tweet about this feeling about envy, and that it's about wanting what others have and also not wanting them to have it. And that's where I thought, well, that's certainly not what I feel. And I had responded about more of this term, it's not even an official word, I think, called compersion, where you feel joy in someone else's successes, right? And it's like witnessing a toddler's joy and feeling joy in response to that, even though it wasn't your initial joy. And I was like, you know what? That's how I do feel about people when they are successful. And then I questioned, how do I help other mothers feel that? Like, I don't want people to feel in the shadows of, I can't participate in the data community, or if it's in your job in the field, if there are a lot of males there, and not feeling that, that you can be happy for other successes if you are not feeling successful yourself. And this is kind of where and I moved my whole family, and I was like, how do I find time to do anything? This is all at the same time. I don't know what I did. So I had written this poem, and my background is in psychology and English, particularly poetry. I don't actually have a background in data viz at all, but I want to read this briefly because I started to think about motherhood and the difficulties with time and energy and participating in this fast-paced and often male-dominated data visualization field. And I thought about the paths we take and the paths we make, and then the paths we think we were on. And I thought about time and accepting kind of the realities of time and not having time, and growth, change, and how to cultivate community. So this is right before I ended up moving, and I was with my oldest son, who was pretty young at the time, because this is about probably 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So the bony branches of my backyard struggle to hold back the bleeding sky. A cool, inky darkness swirls around me. Watered down in blue, there is movement here. Tiptoes are silent. At the edge of my bed, he whispers, "Is it morning, Mommy?" "Yes, it's tomorrow. It's today." I look out the window, reflecting, and fall has been unusual. Deviating from the path of least resistance, like the teeth of burrs, these challenges clinging, each one needing attention. Possibility tangled within. Mornings do not know resistance. Here, 8 years and 118 days have passed. One methodical, perfect movement. Crouched on the floor, he finds opportunity wrapped up in a toy wooden top. With a flick, it spins quickly at first. He watches it, eventually teeters. Tight circles becoming figure eights, symbols of infinity, becoming sprawling squiggles, paths of untraveled thought. Like nautical charts, we unfold the weathered corners of our mind, seeking new places and accepting new paths. My backyard is growing old, and it is time to move on. He ponders, how do we get there? To tomorrow. The top finally falters. Silently, I pick it up, and with a flick, the orbital movement starts over, in a new direction, on a new path. By now, the sun has stretched above the branches, pushing waves of light into the room. And I share this because with any change in our lives, we have to consider and think about how that changes our path and how we're going to navigate that, right? And so one of the things is becoming a mother, or, in my case, moving, taking a new job, any kind of new transition comes with a lot of uncertainty, but also a lot of freedom to decide how we're going to navigate this, right? And today, always, we'll move into tomorrow, and we have to decide how we use that time that we have. Now, the reality is, I often think this too. I don't want to sleep like a baby, I just want to sleep like my husband. And I share this because one of the things I was contemplating when thinking about Moms Who Viz is, why is motherhood different than fatherhood? And I'm going to say that there is a difference. And part of that is not that there aren't similarities. There certainly are. I know plenty of fathers who either take on, more of the role or have, and whatever. There's plenty of similarities and differences between different partnerships and how people navigate having children. But I do believe that there are some things naturally women are more wired to do. And that's just true with my background in psychology. I've studied a bit about this. And at least for me, I'll speak, is that, I worry, I plan, I keep track of things. When did my kid last have a dentist appointment? Was a dishwasher run today? What's for dinner? When does soccer start? Like, is your homework done? Like, all these different things are constantly going through my mind. And I think with that becomes a lot of mental exhaustion with trying to manage both jobs, community activities, particularly with the Tableau public space, and then just your regular family lives. And so I think, there's just certain things, at least for me, like I worry about more, I think about more, and it becomes just more on my plate, right? And so even though my husband's still here and helpful, for some reason, I do feel like this a lot. Somehow it seems easier for him to let things go and move on. So at the end of December, I put out this first first time the hashtag Moms Who Viz was used. And I started thinking about how I could support other women. And that's really the crux of all this, right? How to support other women and other mothers. So I started working on this viz that would allow, I wanted to kind of capture all the things that I do in a day. So going back to my comments about kind of that mental exhaustion, I realized there was a lot of things I was doing every day, and my time was pretty stretched thin, or I was thinking about every day or needed to manage. And I kind of wanted to visualize that in like a beautiful way, right? It wasn't a terrible thing. It's not, I don't necessarily mind all these. It was just a lot of stuff. But I also recognize that for a lot of mothers, I did not see a lot of them visualizing Tableau things publicly. And part of that I had heard was just due to time. It was easier to be on the sidelines and kind of comment and support, but producing was not really something either they wanted to do or had time to do. And so I thought an easy way to get into that is to produce or create a viz that someone could just enter in their data and not have to go through all of the hoops to create the visualization, but it would still be a unique viz. So I created a template that allowed other moms to put in their information about their hobbies, significant events in their life, their daily schedule, like literally what hours are they, waking up, feeding kids, working, running, whatever you do in your day, as well as other, what I call the mental mountains, things that you're thinking about during the day. We had how many kids you have and how old they were and all these different things to kind of capture individual mothers. And so I had put that out there, and if I can, there we go. In the beginning of the year, in January, I published mine. So this, as you can see, and it's more of an interactive thing, hover over some stuff and get to learn about, in this case, me and other folks. Here's Michelle, participated and put together their Moms Who Viz landscape. And it was really cool to see everyone's difference, in their life, their daily routines, their hobbies, their children, and what made them, unique. So that was, like I said, beginning of 2019. And I really had a desire to try to help connect, personal desire to connect myself with other moms. Because what I found was, when we have kids, back in the day, obviously we have communities of people around you to kind of support you through that transition. And what I realized in kind of the digital and the virtual world now, but even in the data viz space, a lot of people are working remotely anyway. And I didn't feel like there was a community that I didn't know who to call upon, or, I wanted friends who understood kind of working in this space as well as, being a parent. So in 2019 at the TC in that one in Las Vegas. It's been so long since we've had one. We had a really fantastic brain date. And so this is where I set up a brain date to just kind of talk about being a mom in this space. And the goal was just to make connections and share some stories about working in the data analytics field. We talked a lot about challenges of time and energy and how we could support each other. And we really kind of tried to focus on how we could help other working moms. Like, we knew there were a lot of folks out there that just, either weren't really connected, but, maybe wanted to be. And so initially we identified a number of ideas, try to, help this grow. And so we created a Slack channel. Michelle kind of created that for us to try to ease into our communications, putting it into one place, and that has been really valuable. I did interviews with all the folks in the initial group here in that brain date to be able to kind of find out how we're kind of all unique and different and yet similar. And so how can we support each other, who has strengths in different areas, both in parenting and in data analytics. And then we talked about having some kind of community collaborative visualization, also maybe identifying how to highlight mothers moms who viz every month or so. And also we talked about blogging on challenges and successes and things that we could share to help, raise up other moms. Well, then we had this pandemic thing happen, and which was all of 2020. And so we learned we weren't alone in our struggles or our successes, and we definitely support each other. We didn't accomplish necessarily all those initial goals from TC, but I think we're all kind of learning to accept, things are what they are. But we did do these interviews, followed these unprecedented times. And so you can find all of them on my website, but Christina and Michelle were obviously two of those. And I just pulled two different quotes from them because Christina says, I asked them kind of, what advice would you give to other moms? And Christina said, find your tribe. It doesn't even necessarily need to be a group of working moms, but individuals who understand your goals and how to get you to where you want to be. She says, I lean a lot on other working dads in the data fam for advice too, on both technical and family baby questions. And Michelle says, prioritize the things that are important to you and not what you think you should be doing based on what you see from others. Let go of perfection. Nothing is perfect, and you can make yourself crazy and burn out trying to get there. And so there's a lot of other fun stuff to read in those interviews, but it was really nice to talk to all the different moms and share their perspectives on, again, being a mom who bizzes. And so during this last year, I think we identified that, balance isn't easy, but it definitely helped to have this community together. I know for me, and I can speak for others because I know folks have felt that was very helpful. We learned that sometimes you have to refocus, and you only can do what you can, right? Last year was a tough year. And so we didn't accomplish all of our original intended goals as a Moms Who Viz community, but I think we accomplished so many of our needs for each other. We spent a lot of time communicating via Slack, just reaching out when we needed help, just shooting the shit, honestly, sometimes. And that was just very helpful to have this group of people who kind of understood where we were all at and could validate some of the struggles we had, but also all of our successes, sharing vizzes and being able to raise each other up in the community. So what's to come? I'd like to say that we're going to continue to do some of the things that we had initially started out on, but, we're in a place of just developing a community and wanting to grow. So we invite other mothers in data to join our Slack channel, and you can reach out to any of three of us to join if you're interested. And like I said, we've got a couple channels, but we keep it pretty low key. And we're kind of like always trying to be connected to that and chatting. We also want to continue to raise up other mothers in the Data Fam community, both on social channels, but also individually when people need any help or support. And so I would say, we're here for anyone to reach out for questions both on, motherhood or being a woman in the data viz field. So, if we're talking jobs, parenting, viz, I think we all end up chatting about all those three things and more to folks, feedback, what have you. So we want to be advocates for their mom, and I think we're open to ways in which to do that. I know we try to casually, like I said, promote other women when we see things on Twitter or what have you, and helping to raise and bring more awareness to women in data viz. So yeah, and I think we still hope to continue to do some more collaboration when we have time, cheerleading for each other, providing feedback. But like I said, we recognize we don't have to do it all, and we don't need to compare ourselves to anyone. So, we're trying to do what we can. So I think this group is pretty fluid in what we try to accomplish. And certainly we hope to have some more brain dates and casual conversations about these different topics, perhaps unique to Moms Who Viz. And anything else that folks want from this community of amazing moms, let us know. I think we're open to ideas to try to figure out how to best, grow the network and, help other moms. So that's really about it. That's all I kind of want to say about what Moms Who Viz is and kind of how it started. And I think that we'll toss it back over to Heidi because we have some fantastic questions that I think Michelle and Christina and I would really looking forward to answering.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that little primer, Lindsay. I especially love your poem and also the quotes from Michelle and Christina. Really, really brilliant. That's even the thing with the don't do it perfectly. That's something even I, as a non-mom, still have to work on. So
anyone can take that advice.
I think that's just something we as women struggle with. But yeah.
Exactly. And so much of this is all transferable, I think, to many other groups.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have lots of time for the panel debate. I know, as I said earlier, many of you have already contributed questions, so thank you for that. If you have any further questions, please make liberal use of the Q&A feature. You will find that probably at the bottom of your Zoom window. So drop the questions in there, anything that you want to encourage, confirm, give us hearts and +1s, etc. So any comments, please leave them in the chat. Try to keep the two separate because otherwise it gets a bit messy. But yeah, feel free to fire all your questions at us. I have picked out a couple, but first I'll hand over to Michelle and Christina so that everybody gets to know them as well. Michelle, do you want to start?
Sure. Thank you so much for having us here. So I'm Michelle Freeman, and I live outside Boston, Massachusetts in the United States. I have two sons, aged 14 and 13, so I'm a little bit on the older end, both because I had my kids later in life and because my kids are older. And I've been married for 16 years. I started my career in IT and spent most of it in IT and IT security, but I've always used data throughout the course of it, and now I'm in a full-time role doing data analytics and visualization. I am a Tableau public ambassador, and I pretty much came to the community for Makeover Monday, but I was inspired at TC18 by the Fanalytics presentations, one of which was by Lindsay Betzendahl, and that really inspired me to get more involved in the community, and I've just been going full, nonstop since then.
Christina? Amazing. Thank you. Christina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Gorga. I am based in Northern Virginia, about 45 minutes outside of DC. I informally say that I'm living in basically Virginia's wine and beer country. So more about what I do with data. So I work for Booz Allen Hamilton, which is primarily a United States federal contractor, although we do have some work in the commercial space and cyber and stuff like that. But I'm based out of their health account. And I'm kind of a sort of unique position. I'm basically in a business development analytics role, helping support a lot of the health leadership. So I get to spend a lot of time talking with the healthcare leaders in our firm. So it's very high visibility, but a lot of fun. And what how I kind of came across like Moms Who Viz, like I had known Michelle and Lindsay prior. I had been involved in the Tableau community in some respect for a couple of years prior to really getting involved in other efforts in the Tableau community, Project Health Viz, Feedback Loop. I am also the inaugural winner of the Tableau Community Founders Award. Actually, funny enough, my former boss is actually the one that has his name in the actual award. Michael Christiani. But that being said, though, I am probably the one that has the youngest child on this panel. My daughter is actually turning 2 in less than a week and a half. She's a bubbly little thing. And as I've been, trying to make that, transition from coming off of maternity leave to what it's like to work and just in general, just in consulting as a mom, there's a lot of shared experiences across the board for a lot of women that are in like data and tech and consulting roles and how to balance the two, but, manage to sort of find a niche within the Tableau community that's doing just that. So if you are at all interested in, how working moms do it and consulting in general, please reach out to me after this.
Great. All right, so we talked about this topic beforehand about Moms Who Viz, and I created all the marketing material, and I used that picture where a mother has her child on her lap while working at the computer. And I know, Lindsay, you said that resonated with you, and I found it in your presentation as well. I'll have to go get the door in a second. What kind of challenges do you face regularly, and why is that different than any other working parent? And I'll be back in a second, but just go ahead, answer this.
I don't know if that was for me or not, but yeah, I mean, so what I want to say about the differences in other fields, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work my 2 more recent jobs in data viz under some pretty amazing women. I know that not to be the case for a lot of mothers, where they're working in organizations that are either male dominated or there's a lot of males in the higher executive roles. I think that's where it becomes a challenge. So in speaking in generalities about the data viz field, I do think it's turning a little bit where we're having a lot more women coming into the data and the tech space. But I think for years, people would struggle with any of the unique needs of mothers in being able to advocate for themselves in jobs. So I think probably any job where it's more male dominated can be difficult, where, like, for example, when your kids are little and you're like, I have to leave right now because they're sick and I got to go pick them up. And that can be a difficult conversation if you have all male bosses who either don't understand or just maybe less paternal, I don't know. But luckily I had a lot of great women bosses who completely understood any kind of situation that happened with kids. That's the biggest challenge just in parenting is there's a lot of spontaneity and not the right kind of way, like ambiguity, like things just happen that you have to be able to tolerate. So, and the other thing about the data viz space that I think is unique that makes it a little more challenging as a parent, particularly now if folks are working from home and their kids might be home, is that I find data visualization to be a very focused work to do, like where you really kind of I need to get into a groove and spend like hours at a time on a project, because if I have to pivot every couple minutes, I'm not productive. And when you have kids around you, or you are being interrupted, or like I said, you do have to go pick up a kid, or something, have a sick day, and like all these things can really make I think data viz projects a little difficult. That's how I've experienced some of it.
Thank you. Yeah, you already mentioned something data viz specific. So the next one is for Christina. What challenges do you see working mothers face when it comes to working specifically in the data viz field, and other differences working in data viz when compared to other fields?
Okay, so the first part of that for data viz, like just in general for working moms in our field, I think one of the things is, and Lindsay kind of touches on this a bit, is one, I think getting into a flow of your work, it's really hard to kind of like switching gears a lot and switching sort of context with really focusing on your work. Now for me, like I can usually like try and find like 15 minutes of time for me to, you know, either jot through emails or, you know, setting up stuff for a meeting. But if I really need to do like truly like my focused creative work, I sometimes have to do that at weird hours. And like some of my workers will be like, why are you up at like 9 p.m.? And I really try not to do that, mostly because one, I want to set sort of a goal that says, hey, just because I'm online at certain times doesn't mean that you need to, right? So I think trying to set boundaries is a really tough thing, especially when you see some of your younger male or, you know, male equivalent like coworkers, you know, not even just working around the clock, but, you know, seeing how they're going for promotion maybe differently than you are. And then being, you know, trying to like make comparisons between like male and female coworkers is always really tough to do in general. So I think for myself, it's mostly trying to figure out those boundaries of like what is okay, what is not okay for me to be doing at any given time, but then also being able to find ways of like what is the best way for me to do my best work, you know, even if that means that I might have to make compromises with other aspects of my life. So if that means, okay, I'm going to block off like, you know, X amount of hours in my work schedule a day, just so that I can call it focus time. It doesn't have, you know, no one else has to really know what that time is. It's just for me to get actual tasks done that I need to get done. But in general, like data viz compared to maybe other fields is, again, it is kind of a weird hybrid of sort of a creative field. And I think now that it's starting to come a little bit more into its own of like what it actually is and what that value is, it's a little bit different than say like truly like UX or UI or maybe even like truly data science work, where again, as I was mentioning before, focus time is really crucial, and not being able to get, you know, two hours, you know, 1 hour here, 2 hours there to get your actual work done is always the big challenge. And I find that I have to really fight over my schedule to make sure that I'm not scheduled with a ton of meetings. Like for example, like last week, there was a couple of days where I had just like 6 hours of blocks of meetings that were thrown onto my schedule. And I literally thought to myself at 4 p.m. that day, what did I do? Nothing. And I just sat in meetings most of the day, and it's really unproductive. So I would say, I'm sure I'm probably going to be answering some variation of this maybe later, but you know, really take control of your schedule, and you don't have to tell anybody what is in your schedule. Even if you just want to schedule like blocks and like different colors for yourself, which I do because I love being able to color block my schedule. But if you just want to say, hey, I wanted to do X, Y, and Z tasks during this like hour time frame, go ahead and do it. That time is your time. You know, if you want to make sure that nobody else takes over your schedule, just go ahead and do it. It's okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I need to start doing that. Lindsay, you mentioned something about challenges with public presence. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So there was a couple of years ago too. I remember someone telling me that, you know, to be a Zen master, you had to work an extra 2 hours a day because you were doing things either for the community, whether it be helping people out, writing blog posts, or other things behind the scenes, even still. And I was like, well, that's insane, because the opportunity for a mother, a working parent, to do that is like almost impossible. And I was really disheartened, not because at the time I was trying to be a Zen master, but because I was like, if that's an expectation, I was just kind of just shocked. And it wasn't an expectation, it was just someone saying like, that's what it really is. And I was like, what? Like, time commitment is, you know, is one of the biggest challenges. And so with the community presence, yes, it is absolutely 100% true. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I put in a ton of extra hours in my life to be present. And even more recently, I have not been as present in the community because it does take time. And I'm sure, you know, Christina and Michelle will agree. I mean, if you're creating vizzes or doing projects or running a blog or giving people feedback behind the scenes, I mean, I spent 30 minutes of my morning giving someone feedback. So it all has to fit in somewhere. And the challenge becomes, if you want to do that, there is something else that's going to have to give, right? But you only have so much time in your day, and you have to decide what is important for you to do. And it's a balance, because I think sometimes I think everyone goes through ebbs and flows. We see some people who are like, they're just doing a ton of stuff, and then they might peter out and they're gone for a little bit, and then they come back, and you know, you don't want to burn out. And so it's really tricky, because I love being involved. I love doing personal stuff. I haven't had a lot of time for it recently, but I love doing that. I like writing blogs, and I like helping people out. I like being social on you know, Twitter with the Data Fam. But you know, then it comes crashing down when suddenly I realize, like, I haven't played with my kids really intimately in like weeks, and then I feel terrible. So yeah, you know, being present does take time. And so I think that the biggest advice is don't try to do it all. I mean, I've certainly made that mistake, so don't. But also recognize, you know, if this is your hobby, then we all make time. You know, you can make time for your hobbies. It's, you know, this is my hobby, so I make time for it, but I have to decide like what's more important. And sometimes there are weeks or days where I have to say, you know, I gotta turn it off for a little bit and do something else, you know, and that's okay. Like, you can always come back to things, and you know, but it does take time.
Right. Michelle, you mentioned something when we talked about this earlier, about career choices and how being a mom influences that. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I have made some very conscious choices about what I wanted to do in my career. And since I had my kids, I've been in 2 jobs. My last one I was at for 8.5 years, and my current one, I'm coming up on my 8-year anniversary. Both of them are in the nonprofit industry, and that was partially because I basically traded quality of life perks for career advancement, additional, you know, more compensation likely. But I really wanted to have more flexibility in my time. I didn't want to be working crazy hours. I really didn't want to be having to travel a lot unless it was my choice. Actually, my kids are 17 months apart, and when they were young, I was terrified of being left alone with them for like overnight. So I basically said no traveling for either one of us, my husband or myself. Unfortunately, he also works in a nonprofit organization. So like we've been able to have dinner together every single night. I was able to work flexible hours and work that into my negotiations. And that's made a huge difference for me.
Thank you. So this is the point where we start diving into a couple of questions from the audience. So again, thank you for everyone who sent questions beforehand. I'll group a couple of them together, and one that came up again and again was basically, how do you even find time for everything? So Christina, I'm going to give this one to you. Do you have any tips that have worked for you to maybe organize a day better or anything like that?
Yeah, you know what? I find that it kind of works with whatever your like personal energy is like on a given day or week. Try and figure out what is the best way for me to take advantage of that energy that I have. So for somebody, it might be totally different. For example, for me, I tend not to be much of a morning person. So I try to do it. So, you know, maybe I might write something down like first thing in the morning before I even open up my phone, just so I can kind of like figure out what's going on in here, up in here today. Like, what do I really need to get done? And that's even before I put on my phone and flip through my emails. So for me, better days start if I'm not just like throwing myself completely into my work. I like to be able to structure it so that I'm doing some non-worky things in the morning, have, you know, some form of a breakfast and tea, and then I launch into work for a number of hours. Now, for somebody else, they might, you know, structure their day a little bit differently. But for me personally, I like to have, you know, recurring breaks as much as possible, just because, and we probably have all realized this in the past year, we've been looking at screens a lot more, even though like our field is particularly very screen heavy. And I just noticed, I'm like, God, like my eyes are like so tired by like mid-morning that I really need to break it up a little bit better. So being able to do like dance cardio for myself, like midday. And then also in the evenings, I usually try and spend some time not doing anything house related, not doing anything kid related. My husband and I got a turntable last summer. So I've been spending a lot of my, later to mid evening hours just kind of like hanging around, having some whiskey, reading, listening to some records, and just building off some time like that, because I think it's really important to also have non-work, not even just like non-data viz time, just time to do things for you. And if it works better for you to literally schedule that into your work schedule, do it. Because I actually found out if I don't have it written into my schedule, it doesn't get done. So go ahead and, just try it out. See if something like that ends up working well for you. There's a lot of different methods for how to organize your day. But one other thing I would recommend that was recommended to me by one of my Junior League of Washington friends is there's this thing called a Panda planner. And it's kind of like, not like a motivational planner, but you can kind of figure out what your energies are for a given week and what are the must get done things, but then structure all of the rest of your work and, passion projects, whatever you want to call it, structure it around that. And that way you'll have sort of a better sense of like rhythm after a couple of weeks of like what's working well for you. And then you can adopt your strategy from that moving forward. But that's what's kind of worked for me.
Yeah, I'm going to say something too, because I'm a big list writer. And so I found when a couple months back, I was really struggling with, being a stay-at-home mom suddenly, or like a homeschooling mom, and like, right, working and being here. And I realized I had stopped making lists. And that really helps me like keep track of all the various things as a parent that I'm doing. Like I literally have, it's like, Tableau to do, things I'm waiting to receive that I ordered so I don't forget that I ordered something, personal to do, work to do, like house to do, things I need to, whatever, right? Like seriously. Like,
my moleskin is my friend.
List. Like I have lists upon lists, but it helps me keep track because otherwise, and they have to be organized that way so that I can say, hey, when I need to focus on work stuff, I know what that list is. And I have a different weekly list for like literally what I have to do at work each day. But I try to keep track of now everything else in my life because I have to compartmentalize, when you asked about doing things in the community, I always have ideas and I may never get to them, but I have to like put them down and I feel really good about checking off one every now and again. Now I know some of my lists I need to get through faster, like my work list, like I better get through. But the personal ones, like maybe it's, I need to do something silly, like buy a picture frame for a photo that's been sitting around. That can happen anytime in my future, but other things have to happen quickly. And so I know, and I used to also prioritize with highlighter and be like, if it's highlighted, these ones are the priority and everything else can happen later. And that it made me feel like so much more grounded so I didn't feel like everything I had to do was just like somewhere in my brain, because I would never catch all those to-dos if I didn't write them down. So that helps me. And I liked Christina's point earlier about blocking off time in your calendar. I block off 2-hour chunks and, it just says I'm working on this project and my colleagues can't necessarily see what it says, but they won't book a meeting with me because I'm booked. And that helps me like keep it quiet. So
I got to chime in too. I put everything on a list knowing that there are going to be things that are going to get shunted from it, but at least having it there helps me keep track of it. The other thing I have that really helps immensely is I have standing things like easy meals all week. We have scrambled eggs for dinner almost once a week. We have pasta once a week, and just things so that I don't have to think about it on the weekends.
I love it.
We go for a walk every day. We play family games every day. And then I can slot in other things around them, but at least it's something to have as a baseline.
Yeah.
My son had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for dinner last night, and he couldn't have been happier. So I was happy he was happy, and I didn't have to cook. Whatever. Sometimes.
Yeah, honestly, and then also sometimes what I'll do too is Tony and I will make like our more ridiculous dinners, like as in ridiculous, like, using like the Dutch oven or something like in the weekend and making it in a large batch. So that way I don't have to worry so much at the beginning of the week, at least on Monday and Tuesday night or whatever I'm going to end up eating. I'll always have something there. But, I try to also make it easy on myself, and I try not to be too hard on myself. I'm like, if we end up doing 2 takeout nights this week, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. I think probably in a pre-pandemic time, I probably would have been even more crazy about doing takeouts and stuff. But now that we're spending a lot more time at home, I'm spending more time in my kitchen, and that's fine too. So Everything's fairly flexible, but being able to make things, fast and quick and, no rush type of, meals are really good too.
All right, that was a ton of advice. Thank you. We do actually have a question from the live audience, which I'm going to give to Lindsay. How do you handle being a mom, working and learning new skills?
Yeah, so I think the best thing is to try to actually, building it into your workday, because for me, learning new skills, I consider that professional development. And if my company is they should, well, mine does. And I would suggest you asking yours, like, how can I, if I want to grow in this space, assuming this is what you do for a job too, then build in some of that time. And like I said, maybe it's at the beginning of your day and you have either a video you want to watch or a skill you want to practice, take that first hour of your day before meetings start, and sit down and do that. So there are plenty of times that for me, skill building means, maybe deconstructing someone else's biz. Maybe it's doing actually a personal project because I want to try something out that I can't do at work. But guess what? I'm going to use that as an opportunity to say, I'm learning something. If I'm not learning, I'm not going to continue to do well at my job anyway. So there's still a return on investment for my company to say, yeah, I can support you taking an hour here, an hour there, doing a training or listening to a video or whatever it is, or like I said, deconstructing someone else's biz to dig into it that may not be applicable to your job, but it is because you are learning something that you will eventually use in your job. So that's how I do it. That's not to say I don't ever do something outside of work, but if this is going to benefit what I do for my job, then I think I can justify that it's during my day. And that way I don't have to lose time later where I might want to sit down for dinner with my kids or, go outside with them now that it's nice out or what have you. And I'd rather do that than at night.
Yeah. We did have a couple of questions around the topic of the pandemic. So Christina, how do you cope with working from home all the time now?
So I will truthfully say, amongst the other folks that are on the Moms Who Viz channel, I've very much lucked out. I've had a situation where I had Emma in a home daycare basically from the get-go, even when I, went off maternity leave back in 2019. So I made that decision back in spring of 2020 that, okay, I'm either going to have her at home, we don't know how long, or I'm going to have her at the home daycare, 5 minutes away. And I decided, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make that decision in the sand. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to have her in the home daycare. I don't have any family living nearby, which would have made it even harder for me to probably keep up with my day job. And you know what? Everyone was pretty understanding about it and they supported me. So I was dealing with a lot of, just trying to feel out what those first couple of months were going to look like. But in general, I've actually really enjoyed working from home a lot more than I thought I would, despite the fact that I'm a really social, extroverted human being, and not being able to see humans like in an office space is kind of weird. And actually the whole idea of it now that we're all starting to get, slowly vaccinated and, the possibility of returning to the office, even for a couple of days during the weeks, just seems really bizarre to me. But I've acclimated pretty well to a work from home environment. I have my dog here. She sits by me all day long and she just kind of stares at me. And I have a multi-monitor situation in my basement, and it's been, overwhelmingly great. But, again, I do not have the juggling that maybe some of my compadres do, where their kids are also doing virtual learning and everything else behind the scenes, like during calls and stuff. But I've been very mindful of a lot of my colleagues that do have more like elementary age kids who are having to go through that experience. Because in the majority of Northern Virginia right now, a lot of people are still either doing hybrid or they're doing all virtual school still. So, what I would tell you is that if you have colleagues that have young kids or, elementary or however old their kids are, just be really mindful and sympathetic that, it's just because you're hearing kids in the background doesn't mean that they're not doing their job. I think that's been a pretty bad misconception of the last like year that, just because you hear moms with their young kids in the background doesn't mean that they're not focusing or trying to, get stuff done during the day. It's just like, you know what? It is what it is. We're all kind of in this boat together and we're going to get through it. And I think, after a couple of months of that, I thought that people would be more understanding of it. But the problem is I'm also seeing on the flip side is that people are getting more frustrated now that, all of us are kind of still in this position. But, I think what we need to make sure of is that positions that we've made about, flexibility in the workplace, making sure that some of that still continues beyond this. I think that's going to be absolutely critical for moving working parents, not just working moms, but working parents in the workplace, and making sure that, just because somebody jets out for like an hour during the middle of the day doesn't mean that they're not committed to their job. So that's kind of my position on what I've seen in the past year.
Thank you. So while we're talking about kids already, Michelle, you mentioned you have the oldest kids here. How much do your children know about what you do for work, and do they have any aspirations to follow in your footsteps?
So I think they actually have a much better understanding nowadays of what I do. I think data visualization is much more accessible to them than the IT work that I was previously doing, particularly IT security. And they actually, so when our school shut down last spring, they shut down for 3 weeks with nothing. And so I scrambled a bit to figure out how I was going to fill their time and continue to work, so they were not just totally on their own. And they actually did data camp for a couple hours every day. They watched Matt Francis videos from LinkedIn and they learned Tableau, and they actually use them for their bar mitzvah projects. So I think part of the way that I introduce it to them is they see me working on my practice projects, and particularly when the topics are really interesting to them, if it's a subject that's fun or relevant to them in their lives. Both of them are pretty passionate about climate change, and so I could show them some of the things that I was doing when topics related to that. Both of their visualizations that they did related to that. They actually helped participate in a Makeover Monday this year. They created the bad biz that everybody had to redo. It was on cereals. And so it was pretty fun.
Amazing. All right, we had one very powerful question from a male attendee, which I didn't necessarily want to highlight that, but what challenges, and I'm going to give this one to Christina, what challenges do you think women particularly have over men to develop data viz knowledge and get a job as a data analyst, for example? And how do you think we together can address the root causes of those challenges?
I think a lot of it just comes from not only building up sort of those networking, so being able to be connected to people that have that knowledge base in that, because still with data viz being primarily a male, at least it lasted a couple years ago, still very much primarily a male dominated field. It would be more difficult to make those connections with males that may have been in hiring positions than maybe women that might have been more of like your coworkers. They may have been your colleagues at the same level. But now that we're seeing more and more women in the data viz workspace, I think the thing that, Lindsay was mentioning a little bit earlier, and, just trying to develop portfolios, what does that look like for somebody that's not typically from, a data focused or a business intelligence degree. So for many of us here, like Lindsay, myself, we're very much on the liberal arts, side of the spectrum, from where we did not come from a formal data visualization background. Not that it really even exists, that much today, because a lot of us just end up learning on the job, right? So what does that look like for somebody that's maybe, transitioning from one, type of career to another? And I would say, it's going to have to be a combination of a couple of things, right? It's going to be, developing those mentor-mentee relationships. I think the good thing is now in the Tableau community, I do know, and I don't know how super active it is, but I know Mark Brayburn 1 or 2 years ago set up that mentor-mentee website that,
Adam's still running it.
okay. Yeah,
Adam
I would,
and Sarah and a few other folks.
yeah. So if you want to look at, stuff that's external, so outside of your, work environment, trying to find maybe some folks that are really speaking to you in the Tableau community, and try and say, like, casually broach it, you can DM them, with most, I mean, I've never really encountered an unfriendly person in the Tableau community. Broach a conversation that says, like, hey, I really admire your work. I want to start to feel out, how do I, get to, X space, how do I build up a data viz portfolio, slowly but surely, because it just doesn't happen overnight. And being able to build those relationships across Tableau or data viz in general, if Python is more your thing, if R is more your jam, or even if some more of, like, things like using Illustrator, like Ali Torpin uses a lot of Illustrator in her work, just being able to identify people that do the kinds of stuff that you do, and have those people in your, what I call your informal board of advisors, being able to build a group of people that you can go to for advice, but also, to have cheerleaders and also people that might have a more critical eye of your work. And being able to, not only give back to those people, but also being able to look out to those people for advice on your career. That is how you will end up figuring out where your niche is and where you want to go in your data viz career. And I will say it's been really helpful for me to have not just a bunch of women that I look up to, but also men too, because at the end of the day, what's going to make us more successful in our roles is if it's not just all women around us. You want to make sure that you have your male cheerleaders there for you. Because ultimately that is how you end up getting promoted. It's going to be a mixture of a bunch of different people rooting for you. So I would say, try and have a little bit of a sort of a smattering of different kinds of folks that you can go to. Make sure that you don't have all, rah-rah cheerleaders. Make sure that you have somebody that's a little bit more critical of you. And that's not a bad thing, actually. Sometimes I like to have sort of those devil's advocates that are at me all the time. It's like, Christina, you just talk too damn fast. I'm like, I know. But, sometimes again, it's like, it's really important to have those folks that you can reach out to and say, like, hey, I want you to look at this, piece of work on my resume. Does this look silly? Or, am I, approaching this the wrong way? Or am I also, like, not giving myself enough credit for the stuff that I do? That's another thing that we don't do as much of women. We don't even self-promote ourselves nearly as much as we probably should. So when you see somebody on Twitter that you're doing awesome work, you should continue showing your work publicly. Make sure that you're reaching out to those people that you see that are doing awesome work, because that's going to help nudge them to continue doing more awesome things.
Amazing. So I know we're running a bit over time, but I do have two more questions that I would love to give in. We have talked a lot about challenges that working mothers face, but Lindsay, what are maybe some of the benefits of motherhood, or that motherhood brings to the data industry?
Yeah, I think because we kind of talked a bit about how, we're kind of wired to be thinking about a lot of things at once, which, as you saw from all of our organization abilities, as much as I think we need something to keep organized, I think women tend to be able to think about and manage a lot of things at once. For better or for worse, I think oftentimes for the better, we're able to keep track of all these different things that have to occur, and therefore I think are less likely to let things fall off the rails, because we're very used to being like, all right, I remember this has to be done in so many months, and this has to be done next week, and this is tomorrow, and this is today, and I have to do, And so for projects, I work on a lot of projects at the same time, 6 different projects I have right now on my plate, all of varying degrees of difficulty and what they need for a client. So being able to remember which goes where, first of all, sometimes we do get mommy brains. Depending on where you are, if you just had kids, this might be more difficult. But I think then later in general, being just much more capable of keeping track of all these different things. And then the other thing is that, the reality is we're also used to talking to kids a lot and having to figure out how to navigate some difficult situations with people. And if you can hone in on this skill of how do you talk to your little kid and try to, get them off the ledge or like not do something, right? I think we learned quickly that having some argumentative conversations don't work. And, I think we learned to navigate and pay attention to people's body language. Granted, we're in a more virtual state, but I think more usually, at least for me, like I have definitely been able to like notice people's body language and tone of voice and things like that. Like, uh-oh, they are cranky. Like something happened earlier today and I should probably be a little more gentle with what I'm going to say. Not thinking that this person is just, being a bear, but knowing how kids are the same way. Like they're cranky because something happened, right? Like they're not just, so and I don't know, you just become a little more attuned to people's emotional capacity and where they might be in a day or how to try to communicate that. I think the flip side is sometimes then we as moms are also just as equally as stressed out and maybe more attuned to be, at least for me, sometimes I'm like in a terrible mood. Which goes to kind of like your previous question about how kind of males and how can we all kind of come together and recognize, and some of that is also recognizing, moms you have no idea what someone has just been through. So also being aware of, we're kind of all in this together of being mindful of what people are going through in their daily lives. But yeah.
That is beautiful. Thank you. So final question, Michelle, if there was one piece of wisdom that you could impart to working mothers who may not have such a supportive network and community such as Mums Who Viz, what would you tell them?
Join us, reach out, please. Like, we are here for you. This community has been so amazing. And particularly in the year of the pandemic, it has really helped save me because I am, like Christina, am a crazy extrovert. Sorry, you're not crazy. I'm a huge extrovert. And I think having older children, I've really missed the community that I built when my kids were in daycare with the other working moms, when they were in elementary with the other local moms. And now that they're in middle school, I don't have that connection. So Mums Who Viz has been fantastic.
Amazing. So Lindsay, give us a quick recap. What is the best way to find our way to Mums Who Viz?
Yeah, so you can definitely either, you can email me, you can direct message me on Twitter or LinkedIn, any of those places. There's a couple places that are helpful to connect. I do have a Mums Who Viz list on Twitter, and so I can keep track of like all the folks that may or may be outside of our Slack channel, but just people that I know who are mothers in the space. Which I can definitely get you in on that list. And then also, if you want to be in our Slack channel, reaching out, to any of us, the three of us, you could reach out any of those three different ways. You could reach me at lindsaybetzendahl@gmail.com. So that's pretty simple. Or like I said, Twitter, LinkedIn, and then we can get you in there. Like I said, I often have Slack up on my desktop. I know folks are been a little busy recently in the spring, but we had been, I think every day we're kind of we're either just chatting or someone's asking something. So I would say we're pretty active for, a relatively small new group of little community. So.
Yeah, and to chime in on what Lindsay was saying before is that if you guys have any like creative ideas or, things that we could be doing more of, please reach out to us, because what we probably really crave right now more than anything is maybe some new ideas of how we can get more involved in the broader DataViz community. I think one thing that I've been really starting to sort of be interested in doing is really trying to reach out to those that may not necessarily be Tableau users first and foremost. So because once we get that, we broaden our sphere to a lot more women that are in the analytics space. So if you know of anyone that would be interested in getting involved or may have some really cool ideas for how we can start to show our work, please reach out to us, because I'm definitely up for ideas.
Yeah, and as we've kind of said, one of what I would like is a lot more like collaboration, and not necessarily like doing a viz, though I've been really happy to see a lot of visualizations being done by both male and female counterparts, women working together on visualizations. But one of the challenges that we talked about is a lot about time, and one way to reduce that is to do something with somebody else. So
Agreed.
Blog posts, teaching videos, like we've seen a bit with, like Autumn did one with CJ for they talked about their collaboration viz, and I watched their video, and it was just nice. She kept saying, it was half the time, it was half the work, and I got like twice as much out of it. And so I think for me, I would love to know more, like, or have better other ideas for different ways that we as a community can help collaborate with each other to, both, continue to grow, but also not necessarily to do it all alone,
Amazing. Well, thank you all of you for joining us today, for being here, for keeping up this amazing community for working mothers in database everywhere. I really enjoyed having you here tonight. And yeah, thanks for bringing this to Data Plus Women Germany. Anyone who has now been curious to join us at further events or upcoming events, we do have a couple that will be coming up in the next few months. So am I showing the correct screen? Like you can see the PowerPoint, right? Thank you. All right. So we will always be meeting on the last Tuesday of the month at 6 p.m. Central European Time. Our upcoming event at the end of April will be Eugenia Kiss, and she talks about the Tableau Community Equity Task Force. The month after that, in May, we have Katarzyna Szymanska, and she will talk about her data science journey. And then we do have a speaker in store for you, but it's not determined yet for the end of June, but you can already register, so please do that if you like. You will note that the short URL is always in the same pattern. So even if you don't have enough time to scan these QR codes, you will find your way there. And of course, you'll find all of these events in the central hub. Now, I'm doing my best to serve you as group lead the best way possible, but I do need your help to make Data Plus Women Germany the best experience for you. So you would be a great help to me if you took a few minutes of your time to fill in this very brief survey so that I know what to do with upcoming events, how you like these events, and maybe what speakers you'd be interested in, and I'll do my best to organize them for you. So with that, thank you all for joining us here today. Again, thank you, Lindsay Betzendahl, Michelle Freeman, and Christina Gorga. I really enjoyed having you here tonight. And I wish you all a lovely day and hope to see you all again in person soon.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.